The significance of Fire Station 2 was its relationship to the early growth of the city of Charlotte.
It took a long time to get that fire station built, partly because that Dilworth wasn't incorporated into the city limits of Charlotte.
Dilworth asked to be annexed for that station, and they were annexed, and the station was a few years in coming.
Prior to that, they got their fire protection from the station that was right in central Charlotte, right near the square.
So here you had this brand new suburb and no fire station. If somebody's house caught on fire, you'd have to go to 5th Street to that fire station, horse-drawn machines or engines, to hopefully get to your house before it burned to the ground. If you really look at that building, you'll understand that Dilworth didn't always look like it does today.
It was mainly residential, but it also was industrial because there was a cotton mill just 2 blocks away, and adjoining this property there was an elevator factory.
Dilworth was one of the booming neighborhoods at the time, and still is a very, very nice and viable neighborhood. The firehouses back then were, I don't know, they were more than just firehouses. They were almost community gathering spots as well, because the firemen lived there, they were part of the neighborhood, people knew them. It was much more walking about then. It was on a more pedestrian scale.
At that time, standard issue for every fire station was a green park bench. Bench was occupied a lot of times just to keep up with what was going on outside, pedestrian traffic and the street cars and vehicle traffic up and down South Boulevard.
It's kind of a different era. That era of building just had a lot of character. Got the nice corbelling up here on the cornice, and you notice the nicer brick was always put in the front for show, and then the lesser brick on the sides. That was normal.
You have this bond pattern on the walls. It's really a little bit decoration, but it also adds strength to the walls. It's kind of a fortress of a building, which is how they built things way back then.
It's got some real charm to it. The voussoirs over the doorway, the front doors, and you've got the windows are still of the same size and haven't been filled in. This is a nice detailing in this brickwork there. Somebody took a lot of pride in their work.
It probably does not compare in physical beauty to Station 5 that we're standing in now, or 6 on Laurel, or 7 in North Charlotte.
I don't know exactly why that was. It could have been that the architectural firm they hired to build it just wasn't as flamboyant. It could have been a budgetary thing where they said, we need this, make it work, make it as simple as possible.
But it's like so many other buildings of that era. They were built on a much more human scale, a more almost humane scale. There's something about that era of building that draws, I think, people to it.
It's the only horse-drawn station still standing. It is the oldest extant Charlotte fire station still standing, and that in itself has value. There was some romance in the time too when it was horse-drawn and everything that went with that.
When the alarm would come in, the alert alarm, 2 bells, the horses that stood over on the north wall of the fire station, and they were freestanding. They were not pinned in, they just stood there. They would start prancing as I had it described to me, and they would prance sideways over and assume their places in front of the fire apparatus. And when they were in place, the engineer, who was the driver of the fire apparatus, would reach over and pull a lanyard rope, and this harness that they described as a quick hitch would drop down from the ceiling into place, and someone who had the assignment would go around and assure that all of the harness was in place, and then he would take his place on the fire apparatus, pull the lanyard also for the front doors to open semi-automatically, and then the engineer would give the command to the horses and out they would go.
I'm sure there were parts of that were enjoyable, and I'm sure there were parts of that were tough. You know, there was no self-contained breathing apparatus to protect the respiratory tract, so those guys died young. They didn't live a long life.
Everyone, as they came aboard, were issued dress uniforms, which, as I understand it, was 12-ounce wool serge, trousers, vest, coat, and cap, and that was year-round, whether it was wintertime or July 4th.
The building helps to communicate the reliability and the permanence of the fire service to the population it serves.
It does provide that tangible link to the past and to the history and where you've been and why you are what you are now. I mean, this is all, you know, all buildings or most buildings do that for us. They give us that tangible link. That's one of the few things that was, you know, that are there that when we weren't.
That fire station, especially because it's now in a pretty developed stretch of South Boulevard, is a great reminder of what came before it, of what enabled Charlotte to be a really prosperous city for most of the last 100 years.